of how to deal with what's happening. So in looking at herbs safety and efficacy, I'll be dealing with sourcing herbs, how to get good quality herbs and using them. Why are we dealing with that? Because when you are sourcing and using herbs correctly for medicinal purposes, that may make the difference, all the difference between efficacy and effectiveness, poor health or wellness, or even life and death. Let me break that down a little bit more. Some of you may have experienced herbal medicine, using herbs, and go, this doesn't work, it's no good. It may not be that the herb is not good, or it's not working. It may be that the quality of it is not good enough, or it may be that you're not using it in the correct dose. It might not even be the correct herb. So if I'm not using the herb correctly, if I'm using it wrongly, if it's a poor quality herb, my condition will get worse. Selected Messages, book 229. For the Lord has given some simple herbs. These old-fashioned, simple herbs used intelligently would have recovered many sick who have died under drug medication. And that's what the purpose of this evening's webinar is. And that is to use the herbs that God has blessed us with intelligently. This is an introduction. God has caused to grow out of the ground herbs for the use of man. And if we understand the nature of those roots and herbs and make a right use of them, there would not be a necessity of running for the doctor so frequently, and people would be in much better health than they are today. So we need to understand them, how to use them, and to use them rightly. And that's where a lot of us fall down. Now, if you can just put in the chat box, what kind of information would you need to be able to use simple herbs intelligently and in the right way? Just jot down a few answers for me, please. What kind of information would you personally need to be able to use simple herbs intelligently and in the right way? So I'll just go into chat. So we haven't got unlimited time, so if you just type in your message. Remember, we're interacting, we're learning together. I might be a little bit ahead of you in this journey. So tell me, what information would you like to have? Anybody? The amount, that's right. Thank you, Paula. The ratio, and how to source a herb. How much do I need to use? Fabulous. Thank you very much for that. That is exactly what we'll be going into. So let me just, all right. One of the things that nobody mentioned is, and the answers are all correct, how to source them and the amount, how to use them correctly. But what is important is how to use them safely. How to use them. Safety is key, because some of the herbs, maybe not the ones that you might have access to, but some of the herbs that are, their therapeutic value is quite close to their toxic value. So we want to be able to use them safely as well. When most herbs you would not give to someone who's pregnant, at least in the first 3 months of pregnancy. But there are many herbs that a pregnant woman can use. There are some herbs you wouldn't use if someone has high blood pressure. But there may be instances when it can be used safely. So safety is key. Thanks for those answers. So we're looking at this evening, how you identify the correct plant, where is the best place to locate this plant, how do you keep the plant in a good condition, what is the best way to use the plant, and how do we buy good quality herbs. So in our herbal safety and efficacy, the first sections, I've divided it into different sections, and the first section, which is dealing with the first comment, sourcing them, is harvesting. It's important to know what to harvest, where to harvest, when to harvest, and how to harvest these herbs. We'll be looking at that. What are you harvesting? Where are you going to harvest it? Where's the best place? When is the best time to harvest? How do you harvest? I'm sure you will agree with me that these are important. One, you need to be able to identify the plant correctly. So you need a wild plant book, a herb book, someone who is knowledgeable to ensure that the plant is identified correctly. There are apps now that you can get that can identify plants for you. You need to ensure that the plant is not an endangered species. So I'm sure most of you, or many of you, know by now that golden seal doesn't grow in the wild anymore. There is no golden seal growing in the wild. All the golden seal we use is cultivated. And also it is one of the most adulterated herbs because it's so common. You also need to ensure that the plant is looking fresh. It's not looking sickly and blighted. Remember, to start, you need good quality plants. So when you collect your plant material, it should be free from debris. There should be no soil, no disease, no pest contamination, insect bites on it, animal bites on it, or near poo or anything. I mean, I know I'm probably stating the obvious. There should be no microbial contamination. Again, blight, fungus, things like that, and environmental pollutants. So we're looking at, there should be no waste material, shouldn't be empty canisters of, let's say, antifreeze container nearby or anything like that. Near busy roads. It should not be, if you're in the country, it shouldn't be near the edges of fields that are heavily sprayed with pesticides. So these are things you need to look out for when you are collecting your plants. Now, times for gathering your herb. And the time you gather the herb will depend upon which part of the plant you need to use medicinally. Now, the thing I love about plants is that we think that a plant, when it photosynthesizes, which is unique to all green plants, they make their own food. And the idea is they make their food and zush, it's dumped in, in the different organs of the plant. That's not the case. So you may have the leaves or the stems accumulating certain foods or products. The root may accumulate others, or less of it and more of something else. In other words, different organs of a plant will take from the leaves just what it needs for its survival. So when we are harvesting plants for medicinal use, it's important to know which part of that plant has the greatest concentration, the greatest amount of the medicinal compounds you want. So if it is in the leaves or the stems and the foliage, if the medicinal component is greatest in the leaves, stems, or foliage, you'd want to harvest that plant, usually during the springtime when their leaves are fully matured, and usually before the full development of the flower. So before it starts flowering, you get those leaves. If the medicinal component you want is mainly in the flowers, then you'd want to be gathering that in the late spring, early autumn, again, when it's fully developed. And how would you know? By the smell or the content of the oil, etc. If the medicinal parts you want is in the roots, you'd want to harvest in the early spring before the sap rises to generate the new growth, or in the late autumn when the leaves and the flowers have died back. We know then that the energy, the medicinal properties will be concentrated in the roots. So roots, you harvest them either in the early spring or in the late autumn. You harvest if you want to get, if it's seeds, fruits and berries, when they're fully ripened. And like for fruits and berries, that will be sort of mid to late summer, early autumn. If it is the medicine you want, like cinnamon or ginger or whatever, you'd want to get that in the winter and in the autumn. So what I'm saying is that depending on what part of the plant you need for its medicinal value, you will harvest it at the appropriate time of the year. That's not to say it won't have much medicinal properties. It won't have any if you were to harvest it at other times, but one of two things: either it won't be sufficient, or it may not even be there, to be truthful. How do we harvest? You do not strip a plant of all its leaves. So, and you don't take a twig and just strip, you just take here a little bit like the word of God, here a little, there a little. You also avoid stripping a wide surface area of bark from a tree. That is to minimize wounding that tree, and also to minimize disruption of food materials, i.e. minerals from the soil, water from the soil. We also need to avoid over-harvesting an area. Having said that, and I haven't included that, I don't think I've included that in my slides, it's best to avoid over-harvesting, but it's best to harvest in an area where you see that plant growing in abundance. Why? Because if it's growing in abundance, it means the soil has a lot of minerals and nutrients and the right pH, i.e. the right acidity, to support the growth of that particular herb. Different herbs grow best under different soil conditions. So you avoid over-harvesting, but you harvest where you see that plant growing in abundance. Now, a lot of the plants will contain, for example, chamomile, and a lot of the kitchen herbs, your rosemary, your thyme, your sage, their medicinal properties are in their volatile oils. And so if you, after a heavy rain shower, a lot of those oils would be washed out. We also tend to harvest plants, and that is not included in my slide. So I'm glad you're here to take notes and ask questions. You also want to harvest plants more in the daytime than in the evening, when photosynthesis is at its peak. That's how to harvest. Where I've already touched this, away from busy roads, avoid heavy, it says, where's a harvest? Heavily polluted areas. No, avoid heavily polluted areas. Avoid edges of fields where crops may have been sprayed with pesticides and other chemicals, and harvest where the herb grows in profusion, and this means the soil and environment is conducive for it to grow healthily. We've covered that area. So I'm just going to, before we go into our second section, I'm going to just have a look and see if there are any questions in the chat. Longevity of herbs, condition that's been treated. Yes, that's for another time. Dried or fresh, we're going to be talking about that, dried or fresh, and fine. I do not see any other questions, so I will continue with the next section. Hopefully, everything will be covered that you want. So section 2 is drying the herbs. Now you've collected the herbs and you've collected them correctly. You know what you're collecting. You've collected them correctly. You want to dry them. Why would you want to dry these herbs? And hopefully this will deal with the question on fresh or dried. Well, we know that fresh plants are moist and nutritious, and are good breeding ground for bacteria, including disease-causing bacteria, pathogenic. That's because they're nutritious. So anything that's nutritious will encourage the growth of other organisms, including pathogenic bacteria. In fact, over 60% of the fresh plant is water. So when you dry it, you concentrate and you make the herb properties more potent. Just think about it. If you were to buy a concentrate, when you buy a concentrate, a juice or whatever, it tastes very, very strong. And you have to dilute it with water to so that it tastes, you know, much better. Similarly, if you've got something with salt, like salty water, and you dry down, as you dry off the water, it becomes more and more salty. Similarly, when you dry your herbs, because the water is being dried out, you have a more concentrated amount of the medicinal properties. That is why, and I might be going a little bit ahead of myself, but that is why, because 2/3 of fresh plant is water, you just need to use 1/3 the amount of dried plant as you would fresh plant. So if you had, for example, 90 grams of fresh plant, recognizing that 2/3 of that is water, the 90 grams of fresh plant would have the same concentration of medicinal properties as 30 grams of dried plant. And it's, of course, because you've dried off the water, that plant would be lighter and easier to carry than fresh herbs. Which is why when we travel and we bring in herbs from wherever we're bringing herbs from, we bring them dried because they won't spoil and they're easier and lighter to carry and pack. By drying your plants, by drying your herbs, you're able to preserve the properties of that herb for longer. You're able to maintain the stability of the herb. And I want to go into that in a little bit more detail. So we're looking at having your herbs on store. So there are some herbs that you would have harvested in the springtime, because that's when their medicinal properties are at their best in the leaves, let's say. But you might not need to use that until autumn. So unless you've got a freezer, stack high, loads of freezer in a freezing room, or you're going to preserve it in, let's say, alcohol or some other kind of preservative, you dry them. In a dried form, if it's home dried, they are potent for at least a year, easily up to 3 years. Beyond that, you can't guarantee the efficacy, how well it will work after that. So that's why we dry them, to stop them rotting, to maintain them longer, and to maintain the stability of the herb. Now, what do we mean by stability? The medicinal plant should be dry enough to stop it from decomposing by bacteria, and B, its therapeutic properties from being destroyed by plant enzyme action. Let me talk about that a bit more. There are two things at play here. If you dry it and you don't dry it properly, or you dry it too much, let's say, you might actually you stop it from decomposing, but you might have the therapeutic properties being destroyed by the enzymes in the plant. Now, you know when that happens, like when you cut an apple and it starts going brown, or cut any fruit and it starts to decolor, that's the enzymes starting to destroy its properties. So this is basically repeat. Now, the drying temperature, that is really important, the temperature at which you dry the plant. If the temperature is too low and the plant is not dried out sufficiently, the plant enzymes or break down or digest the medicinal constituents, and you might get some rotting as well. If the temperature is too high, yes, you will stop the plant enzyme action, but you may also start to denature or break down some of the medicinal constituents. I hope you see what I'm saying here. You don't want it too high, so high that you not only stop enzyme action, but you break down the medicinal constituents. But you don't want it so low that you do get enzyme actions, which will break down the constituents. So we're looking at how we're going to preserve the medicinal constituents from the plant breaking it down and from heat breaking it down. Now, what we've discovered is that the greatest enzyme action is between 20 and 45 degrees. That's when you have the greatest enzyme action to break this plant down. Above 45 degrees centigrade and below 20 degrees centigrade, enzyme activity is negligible. However, below 20 degrees centigrade, microbial action, bacteria, fungus, will destroy it. However, if the temperature is above 80 degrees Celsius, the enzyme is denatured, which is fine, that's what you want, but also some of the key phytochemicals in your plant. So, let me just read the bottom paragraph first. The best stability is obtained if you were to dry your plant between 40 to 60 degrees. At that temperature, you have the enzyme that would break it down being deactivated or denatured. So you're not going to get breakdown by the enzymes, but also it's not going to be too high to destroy the phytochemicals. Bear in mind that some phytochemicals are heat sensitive. Things like volatile oils will be driven off, and they're extracted differently, or they're maintained differently. And you have some mucilages and resins that are denatured at higher temperatures. So ideally, the herb should be about 10% or less the dry, meaning you should have driven off 90% of the water. 10% or more moisture enables enzyme degradation of phytochemicals, which you do not want. Right, so stems and roots should be cut into smaller pieces whilst drying, while you're still green. So you cut them up while they're green. You always dry your plant material in the shade. We do not expose it to direct sunshine. It's good if you can dry it inside within a room or shed, as outside conditions are subject to much variation. Now, I'm giving you this sort of information for an ideal world. I'm talking to many of you who will be using herbs to support your family and friends, and maybe others who come to you. So bearing this in mind, if you do it for your own self, well, that's different. But ideally, you dry your herbs in the shade, not exposed to direct sunshine, within a shed or room, because of the variability of outside conditions. Drying temperatures. Yes, I'm looking at the last one because this slide was actually divided in two. Plant material should be spread out thinly, not bunched, to reduce the risk of fermentations or mold. Drying room temperature should not exceed 27 degrees. So, in summary, drying plant material should allow enough moisture to be removed to keep it stable and in good condition. This is to retain therapeutic properties for when you have to handle and process your plant material. By good condition, we want it to be free of mold, bacteria, enzyme action, chemicals, and anything else. All right, just have a look and see. Is there anything else in the chat? No. Okay, we'll just continue. Okay. And just give me a little, just a bit stuck at the moment. Bear with me. Keep your prayers going. Right. So let's see. This should. So section 3, how are we going to store this herb? So you've got your herb, you've got your plant, you've got it in really good condition. Remember, the idea is you want the therapeutic property to be as close as possible to when you use it, from the field to the body. You want to maintain that therapeutic property. So you've gotten your herb and you've harvested it. You've now dried it out correctly. You need to be able to store it. You don't want all that work that you've done to be undone in a moment. We want to protect our dried herbs from physical factors such as light, moisture, heat, and air. We also want to protect them from biological factors, from insects, from rodents, mice, and whatever, from bacteria, and from fungi. And finally, we want to protect our dried herbs from chemical factors such as heavy metals, harmful chemicals, pesticide residue, and toxic fumes. So after you've dried your plants, the ideal thing is to store them in paper bags away from light in a dry area. If you have extracted it, so for example, you've made it, incorporated it into a cream, or you've put it in, you preserved it in glycerine or in tincture form, it should be stored in dark bottles away from light, because remember, light is very powerful. So you have a lot of photochemical reactions happening because of light that breaks things down. And you see that all the time. Light bleaches our curtains, light bleaches all sorts of things. Never return decanted liquids or creams to stock bottles. So you've got your big batch of herbs. And so, for example, you might be weighing some out or measuring some out. If you, oops, I put a bit too much in. Do not return that to your stock. Put that aside, because we want to avoid contamination and cross-contamination. And the last point goes without saying, you want to keep it away from children and pets for obvious reasons. Yeah, your containers should be well sealed. Yeah, sorry. You need to, last two, you need to put the date on which you collected your material, because as I mentioned, over a period of time, herbs will lose their quality and they can't keep indefinitely. So you just need to put the date. And this goes even if they're not dried. You freeze them, put them in bottles, you need to date them. And also, logically, you use the older samples first. So I think we had something in the chat. How many different types of herbs can be used together as a treatment? What I'm going to do, I will continue, and then questions such as these, I'm going to ask the moderator if they will read them out, and we can do that in a discussion. So we're on to our next section. And now I know this. Section 4, buying herbs and herbal products. Not all of us will have the opportunity to grow. In fact, most of us won't have the opportunity to grow all our herbs that we want. And we have to buy them in. We need to see how we should get the best. Now, I have here pictures of 2 samples of marigold. Tell me why the one on the left is, well, high quality, and the one on the right is low quality. Just pop in a couple of words in the chat. I'm going to look in the chat. In a few minutes, I'm going to look into the chat to see what you've written. Describe why the one on the left is high quality marigold and the one on the right is low quality marigold. They're both marigold plants. Marigold is an amazing anti-inflammatory, antifungal plant. It's really good for the female reproductive system. I've used that effectively many, many times. It's one of my favorite plants. Uh, thank you. Now I can, all right. Excellent. Probably wasn't dried. Color, yep. Over dried, yep. Yes, yes. What you're doing is giving me reasons as to why. That's right. How it good. Yep. I have, yeah, lovely. Thank you. Excellent. Yeah. You see the one on the left, you can still see the colors. You see the colors of the leaves. You see the colors of the flowers. It looks good. It looks better, even though they're both dried. So it has retained most of its medicinal properties. It's just lost water. And many of you actually gave the answers as to why that one has poor quality. Now I shall not be going, I notice every time I go into chat, my thing does not want to. So I won't be going back into chat. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. So here's some questions you need to ask. This is when you are contacting a herb supplier. And this is sort of information I look for. How are those herbs grown and harvested? And some of the information we've discussed before. Are they organic? That may be really important, especially if someone's critically ill. Depends. Because to be fair, a lot of us, our diet is not 100% organic. So when we use far fewer herbs than we do food. So organic may or may not have bearing. Were they wildcrafted? What's the difference between wildcrafted and organic? It means wildcrafted, they weren't specifically cultivated. You went somewhere and you saw them growing in a profusion and abundance, and you picked them. So these are the questions you need to find out. Were they grown on brown ground, i.e. ground that was used for dumping rubbish or chemicals? Is it near a nuclear power plant? Is there a nuclear power plant like within 50 kilometers? Or maybe, no, well, that's a bit much, maybe 20 kilometers. Were these plants ecologically harvested, i.e. were they just over harvested? Were they just dragged up? And when this is a supplier, you'd want to know from the supplier whether it comes from the country that it's normally grows in. So if you, an example, which is, okay, this is one that springs to mind. All of us know that when you eat a banana or a mango that you pluck from the tree, or even that you pluck from a tree fresh, it's far tastier than bananas that used to be ripened in carbide. They even do that sometimes in the Caribbean, ripen, and in other tropical countries, ripen fruit artificially for commercial reasons. So these are some of the questions you might want to find out from your supplier. Some more questions to ask. Where did the herbs come from? Did they come directly from the grower, from a wholesaler, or was there somebody in between? Was there in between? So the longer the chain supply is, the greater the opportunity is for those herbs to be adulterated or tampered with. So, and I'm talking to you because I know that as serious people you're serious about not only your health, but the health of others. Where did those herbs come from? Directly from a grower, from a wholesaler, or from intermediary? I'm talking about when you're ordering your herbs from someone, or online. You see a company online, contact the company before you buy their herbs. and raise these points and questions with them. Yet more questions to ask. You want to know, do they test to validate their raw material? I.e., so you might buy what you think is a batch of chamomile or ginkgo and it might be in powder form, turmeric. But that can be adulterated with other things, golden seal. So if you have a reputable supplier, they will either have a certificate to say that they've tested it, that it actually is what it is. They'll also check for its purity. And they use sophisticated methods, spectrophotometry and all this kind of chemical methods to check that it really is what it is. Which is why sometimes they say you get what you pay for. And this is not just for herbs. I'm talking about even when you buy your stuff, your capsules or your pills in your health shop or whatever, and you read it. Some of these, read about the companies. Some of them don't bother to test, and others do. And that will be reflected oftentimes in the price. Many of these companies actually do their own research. Now, time is skipping away, but we're coming to an end. So are the herbs free from pesticides and heavy metals? How do they test for potency? How do they test how much active constituents there are in that sample? Do that company that you are ordering from, do they have documentation and or a certificate of validation? You'd also want to know, if you're buying liquid form, what solvents were used to extract the herbs. Was it acetone? Was it in good quality? Was it butanol, which is something that I don't think I want that in my body? Was it ethanol? Was it? You'd want to know how were those herbs extracted in the first place, just so that you are happy in your mind that you have gotten the best you can. Remember, the better the condition the herb is from the moment it's harvested to the moment it is dried, to the moment it is stored. You want to, and packaged, you want to be sure that you're getting the best you can for your temple and for the temple of your loved ones, as people who have to give an account one day for our bodies and the way we've kept them. Here are 3 samples of chamomile flowers. I'm not going to go back into chat, but which one would you buy and why? A, B, or C? And when you select it, tell me why. So I will look and see. No one's responded yet in the chat. So you put A because, B because, C because, or whatever. 2 people. Thank you for responding. Just a couple more replies. Remember, what you write will also help somebody else. So we're looking at when you go to buy these, like sometimes I like when I can actually see them. I don't often get that opportunity to actually see them. But when you open it and you think, right, oftentimes when we open our dried herbs, thank you, they look like C. So with A, you can see the chamomile, you can still see the flowers, the flower heads, because that's where most of it is, and the color. With B, they look a little bit manky, don't they? They've lost a lot of the petals, the flowers, but you can still see what they are. With C, we don't know what that is. That could be anything, but yeah. I mean, that C is what we normally get in our tea bags, so it's ground a bit more. And yeah, tea bags don't have much medicinal properties. I'll just mention that. So if you do take chamomile and you really want it to help you to go to sleep, let's say, or you want it for its anti-inflammatory properties, and you use a tea bag, you need to use a minimum of 3 tea bags to a cup of water to get, you know, good therapeutic benefit if you have to. I trust that most of you have put that you would buy sample A. Our final section is what to look for in the labeling. So now I'm not advertising either of these. That's not, I don't do that. Now look at these labels. I would like you, and I am going to take the opportunity to go back in the chat. I know it's not, maybe it's a bit risky, but which is the better label from the front? Clue, I did not ask you which is the more, and I'm not asking which is the more attractive label. I'm asking you which is the better label. So you're going to the health shop or you're looking online for your herb. Which one is a better one? Which one has the better label on it? I can't resist going into chat. I have to see the one on the right, the nettle one, right? We've got mixed responses here. B, the one has a Latin, good. All right, thank you, yes. So, I knew I shouldn't have done that. Something time to get a new computer. All right. I'm trying to, let me just come out of here. All right, good. The one on the right. The one on the left, it looks attractive, and I know we had a mixed bag of answers, but if you're buying that for, you know, I just fancy a nice cup of nettle tea, fine. But if you wanted to use your nettle for medicinal use, it's not appropriately labeled, it's not sufficient. And as somebody said in the chat, what do you need to look for? First of all, it should contain, first of all, it should be airtight and sealed. It's not just turned down and a piece of sellotape holding it together when you go to the shop, unless you're buying it there and then and you're seeing it. You don't want that. It should be airtight packaging. It should be sealed. It should have the country of origin on it. It should contain the date of manufacture on it. It should have the batch number on it. Now that's important. All of these are important. In fact, they are legal requirements, especially for medicinal properties. And I'll give you an example. So the other, some months back, I was using some tincture, and I noticed that, hey, this particular tincture I was using did not look, it has some weird looking sediments in it. And I contacted the company and I says, look, batch, blah, 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 blah. This is what I noticed. This company keeps a sample from every single batch they send out. They went back to that batch and said, no, that's fine. It is because of the unusual weather conditions why some of the constituents have settled out and have precipitated out of the solution. Absolutely fine. Now, if there was no batch, if somebody says, look, I took this thing and I vomited or I did this or that, you've got the batch number, bam, you go straight back to that company. It should contain an expiry date. It should contain, if you're buying a mixture, a list of the ingredients, or if you're buying a cream, it should, as somebody pointed out in the chat, contain a full scientific name of the herbs, genus and species. That's like, it should have the herb's first name and surname. The genus being the surname always begins with a capital letter and the species with a lower letter. The reason for this is herbs have many, 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 many names. Even within a 2-mile locality, the same herb can be called by different name. But the scientific name is always the same worldwide. You know, if the scientific name is there, you've gotten what you really have asked for. So like urtica, there are many species of urtica, but the one that we use medicinally is Urtica dioica is nettle. So the scientific name for nettle is Urtica dioica, but there are other nettles. If it just says nettle, it's not going to be helpful. Same with echinacea, and I've seen this. Echinacea has 9 species and 2 subspecies in that plant. If I buy some echinacea, only 3 of them are medicinal. How do I know if I get echinacea, which that I've got the medicinal one? I won't know unless I have the full Latin name. Did I mention at the part of the plant, what I didn't put down, it should also have the part of the plant. So it should be nettle leaf or nettle root or nettle seed. All those 3 things are used medicinally, but for different things. So the nettle seed is for kidneys. The nettle root is for prostate problems. And the nettle leaf is used as upper respiratory tract things like hay fever. It also stops bleeding. So the part of the plant has to be on the package as well, which I haven't put on. So, and also there should be instructions on how you use and the dosage. That's if you are buying it in. However, when you are giving it to somebody, if you don't need to put down the scientific name, or if it, like say a scientific name and the batch number and the rest of it, but you need to have a record of that. But if you are buying it in off the internet or in a shop, it needs to have that on. But not if you're giving it to your friends and relatives and you give them a package of, I don't know, nettle tea. It doesn't have to have all that on it. Medicines will be strongest and safest from the right healthy plants harvested at the right time of the year and using the right plant part stored the right way for the medicine you want. All these have to be in place. The right plant and it's healthy, the right time of the year harvested, the right plant part stored the right way for the medicine you want. It's important not only we don't only want our herbs to work, we want to be able to use them safely. Thank you so much for your time and for listening. And now we go over back to you, Joan, for questions. I will stop sharing. Oopsie.
Thank you, Marcia. That was absolutely amazing. I have to say, you know, maybe you finished too soon, I'm not sure. But I certainly got a lot out of the presentation, and I'm sure that our listeners have also. Thank you. You know, Marcia, you know, when you talked about the herbs and, you know, you go into your presentation, it became more and more apparent to me that it's deep, isn't it? It's a very deep subject when it comes to herbs and how to use them and how to store them and the color of the herbs and whether they're dried or they're too dried or they're not dried enough. So I've certainly learned quite a bit from you. So there are some questions, and I'm just going to ask the questions now, and then what we will also do is open up the floor for live questions, so there's a bit of an interaction. What do you think, Marcia?
Yes, I'm quite happy with that.
Okay, so let me just ask the first couple of questions, and then what we're going to do is go into the live discussion. So how many different types of herbs can be used together as a treatment? How many types of herbs can be used together as a treatment?
That's a very good question. Back in the day, people used to use up to 15 herbs, but you can use anything from one, I would say personally, from 1 to 5 herbs. The reason is, if you put too many herbs in and someone reacts, you don't know what they're reacting to. Also, people who use many, many, many herbs, they know which herbs will work best together. Some herbs, if you put them together, they'll cancel out each other's action. Other herbs will work what we call synergistically. They will enhance their action. So I wouldn't put more, for a beginner, I wouldn't put more than maybe say 2 or 3 herbs in a mixture. Certainly no more than 4.
Good. Okay, then. So I hope that answered Yvonne's question, but I will ask everyone at the end. So the next question is, which nettle is best? So you mentioned nettle. Maybe you answered that already, probably, Marcia. So you mentioned that if it just says nettle, it's not good enough, but I think you mentioned there's nettle root, there's nettle leaves, there's nettle seeds. So not just mentioning nettle isn't enough. It has to be like nettle leaves, or what part of the nettle it is.
Right. Yeah. Also, I mean, you've got white dead nettle, you've got other nettles, but this is the scientific name, which was I put it in the chat, the scientific name for nettle. So once you see Urtica dioica, you know that's nettle, proper nettle. Because you've got other plants that people might call nettle, like white dead nettle, which is a different name altogether, layman album, and it does a similar job, but not completely the same. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And then the other question that I've noted from the chat, and then I'll open up the floor, is please can you recommend a trustworthy herb company or where to buy the seeds to grow your own?
Unfortunately, because I am a practicing medical herbalist, I can't recommend any companies, but I've given everyone sufficient information to know what to look for in finding a trustworthy company, but I may not promote any company above another.
Okay, all right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask people to put their hands up if they've got any questions, further questions. I've just unmuted you all, hopefully. And if you put your hands up, or we do it in an orderly fashion, please go ahead and ask Marcia further questions, or you want to make a contribution, or something's on your mind regarding the presentation that you've seen, you want more clarity, please feel free to go ahead. Anyone? Don't be shy. So Marcia, while we're waiting for people to muster up the courage to ask questions, or maybe they're thinking about it, I know that we are keen to have a full training session on the use of herbs, medicinal herbs, how to use them, what to use them for, etc., etc. And I know that you're in the process of developing something like that. I don't know if you wanted to just let me give you a few moments to mention that, Marcia.
Yes, thank you, Joan. Yes, brothers and sisters, friends, we recognize more and more the importance that we have in looking after our bodies, and that herbs is one of the ways, one of the parts of the natural armory of things along with other health practices for restoring and maintaining good health. Now, a solid foundation in herbal medicine, it has been what we call a graduate position. You used to have a degree, a 4-year degree course, where you were grounded in other areas. However, let me tell you this, between you and me, we, as a lecturer on such a course, discovered that I was only just explaining scientifically what my ancestors always knew and always did. So I'm putting together information for those of you who really want a deeper dive into this important area. I know the time is coming, and you know the time is coming when access will be maybe severely limited, not maybe, will be. So I'm putting together information that you will be able to help yourself and your loved ones. And at various stages, it will be helpful if you have a basic knowledge. If you are serious, it means then you need to have studied basic physiology, anatomy, and about the human body, preferably up to A levels. But don't worry, if you haven't done up to A levels, you'll have a basic knowledge up to GCSE. That's if you're serious. But fret not, what I'm putting together is something for different levels. So keep your eyes posted, and the AHR will advertise hopefully later this year when these courses will begin.
Thank you very much, Marcia. That's good to know. And like you said, we will be advertising these courses. I think you said around about September, October time you plan to start them.
That's correct.
If I'm not mistaken. And I too am looking forward to it. And I will certainly be joining on those courses. And I'm sure there are quite a few people who, like me, will want to take a deeper dive. Because you never learn enough anyway, you know, no matter what you do, no matter what line of work you're in, it's good to always learn and refresh and get more knowledge, you know, sharpen your knife, so to speak. So there's a hand up. Let me just go in. I think I saw the hand. Where is it? Did I see a hand go up?
Yeah, it's my hand.
Oh yes, please. Ask.
Hi, hi, Samantha. I'm sorry, I was driving during some of the presentation. I'm not sure if you mentioned if we could use a dehydrator for drying the herbs or if it has to be in the oven.
Thanks, Samantha. That's a brilliant question. I did not mention that. I hadn't thought about it. I should think so. So long as the temperature is between 40 and let's say 60 degrees. That is the optimum temperature to dehydrate your herbs. I did talk about this, the temperature. So I guess if you could, that's why we wouldn't recommend putting it in an oven, let's say. I'm not sure what temperatures dehydrators go up to. Maybe you could enlighten me.
Yeah, I just left my one at my mum's house. I'm just going to double check. I've got a picture of it in a moment. Sorry, because they don't.
Check its temperature values, and if you can get it between 40 and 60, that would be perfect. But it wouldn't be able to dry enough. That's the only thing. So, for example, if I'm drying herbs, like I dried some elderflowers because if I don't, I'd be streaming with hay fever. I would need to dry, if I dry, let me see, the equivalent of 2 double beds would probably last me for about a month or so, because when you dry them down, they tend to shrink right down, don't they? But yeah, if you can get the right temperature, a dehydrator would be good, but it wouldn't dry enough. Probably just dry enough for that one use.
Okay, thank you. The top temperature is 70, but
Yeah.
normally I leave it
And
on
what's
for
the
like
lower
12
temperature?
hours. The lowest one is 20.
Oh, fabulous. So put it between 40 and 60. Any temperature between 40 and 60 should be fine.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I can see now there's a raised hand from Flo.
Hello. Yes,
Hi.
hi. Thank you for the beautiful presentation, sisters. I just want to find out, you said that when collecting herbs, we shouldn't go maybe near the roads and near the edges of the fields. I don't have a big garden myself at home, so where is the best place I can go to collect herbs? Say if I don't want to buy, if I just want to collect for my own use at home and maybe dry, so where can I go?
You can go to forests, you can go to any nature reserves, anywhere where there's areas like forests, woods. You wouldn't want to collect them too low down because you want to be careful where dogs urinate and or poo. But yeah, you can go to forests and you can go to woods nearby. Some parks, if you have a secluded area.
Yes.
Thank you. I was just writing down. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, Flo. And then I think, Flo, was your question answered?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
And
you.
there's a question, raise hand from Michelle. Michelle. Please.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for the presentation.
You're welcome, Michelle.
Hi. I just wanted to ask about, you see like herbs like nettle and those ones that we use for like hay fever and stuff. So sometimes I pick them like to give my son, but I'm just wondering, because I've seen that you can use them like in your salad. Is that safe? Is it okay? Or is there a certain amount that we should be having or not having? Just there's some herbs they say you can put in your salads, so, or like dandelion. I'm just wondering, is that okay?
Yes, nettle is amazing. You can't get too much of that. They make soups and yeah, salads, but this time of the year is not really. When they start seeding, then the leaves are not that nutritious.
Okay.
But in particular, nettles are absolutely greedy plants. They literally drag all the minerals and nutrients out of the soil. So if you want a really good natural multivitamin, multi-mineral supplement, go for those tender nettle leaves.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, yes. And also someone's asked the question, how do you identify herbs, Marcia?
What I said was, you either go with someone who's knowledgeable, or you just get a book, a good herb book, or an app.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much. And I'm sure that's something that will be covered in your upcoming course, hopefully pretty much. But yes, a book or an app. I know that sometimes these apps are you know, it depends on which app there are, and I don't even know which app to recommend actually. Simply because I've used an app and it's like it won't recognize. It's different in different countries, is what I've noticed. So yeah, I think someone's put in the chat. Picture this app is a good app to identify plants. So picture this app. Oh, so it's picture this, all one word. Thank you, Samantha. Are there any other questions, please? The recording will be available. Yes, it will be to the registrants. The recording will be sent out to the registrants.
Hi.
Sorry.
Hi. Yeah, hi Joan, it's me, Lucille.
Oh, hi, Lucille.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, yes, thank you, Marcia, for a brilliant presentation.
Yes.
one of the questions that I have, and I don't know if our listeners have it also as well, I have a range of different herb books, and I love herb books, but is there a particular book that you would recommend that we can use for the British herbs that we have?
Yes, I do. There are a number of books, but I should have okay. If I can get them and put it in the chat, or I can send it to the AHR and HR. Can I send it to you, Joan? The books that I recommend.
Yes,
there won't be many. There are two that I think are key. If you give me a second, I'll go and get them and tell you and write in the chat what they are. Would you like that, or would I give it to the AHR?
Yeah, I think it'd be good to give it to AHR on a
I'll
PDF
do it to AHR
document.
and
Yeah.
AHR. Joan, if you can get it out to the people. These books will talk about them, not just what they're good for, but they talk about the physiology, and they're really excellent books for beginners.
Oh,
and
lovely.
explains the whole concept of holistic healing. Now, one of the things I must say is, and I talk about this quite a bit, people come to me and they say, oh, what can you give me for blood pressure? That's the wrong question. Totally the wrong question. And even we are told clearly in Spirit of Prophecy, and not just Spirit of Prophecy, other people tell you, first, find out why you've got blood pressure. Then you correct faulty habits. And then, and only then, do you go to someone to assist nature for health. I think maybe I've missed out one of the stages. You correct, right. Find out why you've got the high blood pressure. Remove any reasons. So it could be stress at work, you need a new job, or it could be stress from the home environment that needs to be sorted out. It could be emotional childhood trauma, whatever's causing that. Remove from that. You put right, wrong habits, and then you ask. You go to someone. Only when those other steps are in place can you then the body can be helped through things like fasting, detox, herbs, and everything. In fact, a herbalist will never just bam start giving herbs without looking back at all those causes and rectifying, working with the person to rectify it. So remember, not just herbalists, but all medical missionaries and all alternative practitioners, if they know what they're doing, never treat disease. Treating a disease might give a temporary cure. We always work with a person for their healing.
Excellent response. And yeah, Sonia says ascertain the cause, look at the cause. And then I see that Valerie has said that you can go on Google and use the camera icon to identify any herbs as well, which is very useful information. Thank you for putting those in. And Yvonne says, I have God's Healing Leaves by Robert McClintock, I think it is. McClintock,
yeah.
Which is he's Christian based. And New Age free. Oh, okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Are there any more questions? Just to reiterate, I will be sending out the recording for this presentation. It was brilliant. Thank you so much, Marcia. And also, if there are any handouts, any useful handouts that Marcia may provide, I will be sending it out also. And also, yes, the book titles is what Yvonne is asking for. Are there any other questions in the chat? Any other questions in the chat? I've been sitting there, I've been getting phone calls and messages because people, one or two may have forgotten, and they're asking if you're going to put it on again, Marcia. But what we will do is we'll provide the recordings to those people.
Fine. And for those of you who want to really know about how to use the herbs. Keep your eyes posted, and AHR will inform you when the course will begin.
Yes. Excellent. So any other questions, please? Any other questions? I like Liesl said, and so many others, I thoroughly enjoyed it, Marcia. It has made me start thinking, because I know when I bought some motherwort, I purchased some motherwort, and it looked exactly like bee. And I'd purchased it, but I didn't think there was anything wrong with it because it smelled fine. But now when I look at it, I'm thinking, I mean, I've still got it in a glass, because what I did, I transferred it to a glass jar. And I'm thinking, why does it look like that? This was a long time ago. So you're saying that the herbs, even when they're dry, they should actually look like the plant it is. Is that what you're saying? It doesn't change its appearance at all?
Ideally.
How long you've kept it?
No, after let's say 1 to 3 years, depending on the plant, it will begin to deteriorate naturally. The medicinal properties will naturally break down.
Okay.
I'm not decomposed because they're being rotten. They just break down their structure. Ideally, if the flowers should retain their colors, you think about when you press flowers, they retain their color. Sure. And their smell. But it doesn't mean, though, that every single plant, they should be green. That you should see that they're green plants.
Fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Excellent. So they should be green. Even if they're dried, it should still, actually, I've noticed that I've dried nettles before and they become even darker green.
Yes, right. Because of the water, they become more concentrated.
Okay.
So the green gets, yeah.
Yeah. Lovely. I can see I can see a part 2 coming along. And by the way, for those of you eagle-eyed viewers, you'll notice that there's duplications of names, and then the name Errol Cornwall seems to have popped up 2 or 3 times. I'm not sure what happened, and I'm going to report it to Zoom, because it was people who came in, logged in under their name, but that name appeared. So I will be going to Zoom to find out what happened there. So just thought I'd raise that with you. I am also thinking that there's going to be a part 2, like there was with Lucille's Essentials, of setting up your clinical practice. There will be a part 2 of that, and Lucille is working on that. And Marcia, I'm pretty sure there's going to be a part 2 for herb safety and efficacy. If, depending on which one comes sooner. And I know that you're working on your course. So we shall see. We shall see. We were not going to have a webinar in August, simply because it will be the day after bank holiday, and I know a lot of people are going away with their family and loved ones. And so our next webinar will be the end of September. But like I said, I believe if Marcia and the AHR team have put it all together, then probably it will be the start of the course. So it will take us through the winter months, and also Lucille's part 2. All right. And we do have other speakers on stand. There is a doctor who is willing to come on and provide some training as well, or tutoring. Okay. All right. So if there aren't any more questions, please let me know. Speak now or forever hold your peace. No? Anything from you, Lucille?
No, Joan, nothing. No,
okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to stop. The recording is going to stop after we've closed with a word of prayer. And
just before you go, Joan, someone has asked, have we got a WhatsApp group?
Do you know, it's something that I've been thinking of doing, and if people are willing to join, then I will send out a link. It will be specific, but we do have groups that we already post in. So I know that a lot of people who attend some of these, I recognize quite a few of the names from another platform, and probably, I'm not sure, it's something that I'm going to think of, or we as a team will think about if there is a need for it. But there are many different ways of communicating, and what I've done is people who have emailed me with inquiries, I add them to a mailing list, and so there is definitely an AHR mailing list. And you will receive information from time to time that way as well. Yeah, I hope that's, let me just see, there's another, is there another question or chat? No.
There's a question about the, has the recording for setting up the clinic being sent out?
Yes, what I'm actually doing, I'm sending it out privately. So if someone requests it, I will send it to them privately. It's not, we do have a YouTube channel. We do have AH Reformers YouTube channel, but for the webinars, I'm not making them public at the moment. So for those who have registered, they're the ones who will receive it, and the handouts. And I know some people have received it. If you haven't received it and you registered for the Essentials class and you were part of it, please let me know. Send an email to ahreformers@gmail.com, and I will certainly I'll get that video out to you if you haven't yet received it. But I am sending it privately from our YouTube channel. It's not going public as yet, because there are some people who are still requesting to watch it, and yeah, so that's the format. That's the way we're doing it at the moment. But the video is there. It is brilliant. I know that people who have watched it have learned a lot, and they are, as we speak, going about setting up their clinical practice, even if it's just renting a little room in a GP practice. Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you so much for joining us. If there aren't any more questions, I'm going to say a short word of prayer to close. Marcia, thank you so much. We are looking forward to your training program, absolutely. And I know there are people who have been asking, when are we going to have a medicinal herbal class? And I know that it's on the horizon.
Amen. Praise God.
Yes, we do need it, because we know what's coming. For those of us who know, we know what's coming, and medicines will be in very short supply, but we know that God's medicinal herbs
Amen.
grow from the ground, from the earth, where he left it for us. Praise God. Okay, so let's bow our heads. Thank you, dear Heavenly Father, for allowing us to be on this platform, dear Lord, to learn so much about your wonderful medicinal herbs that, dear Lord, you've given it for the service of man. Thank you, dear Lord, for Marcia. I pray that you'll be with her. Thank you for, dear Lord, for controlling even the technical difficulties that we had at the start. And for those who are on the platform, I pray that they will use that information, dear Lord, to start sourcing their herbs responsibly and keeping them and drying them safely so that they can use it. And I pray that we will have a wonderful, blessed evening and night. We will go to bed and feel rested when we get up in the morning. In the name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you so
God bless.
much. Thank you.